We've all been there. You've finally saved up the money to buy a new ballin' gaming monitor. But how do you decide? Do I go high resolution, a little bit lower refresh rate? Do I go really high refresh rate but lower resolution? Well, it doesn't matter anymore. ASRock, who sponsored this video to check out their Phantom Gaming PGO32UF S2B 32-inch 4K 240Hz OLED gaming monitor, it's no longer a problem. Because despite being all that, this is also a 1080p 480Hz 32-inch OLED gaming monitor. It's dual mode. It does both. This is the new Avatar game. It is absolutely stunning, running on this wonderful ASRock Taichi computer. We've got a 7950X X670E Taichi Carrera and a 7900 XTX Taichi, but you don't always play games like this. Sometimes your game is a little less beautiful and it has a lot more valves in it, and in those ones you need high refresh rate. I would show you, but I don't actually have that game installed and the internet's really here. But for illustrative purposes, let's switch it. So the buttons are backwards. Up is down, down is up, right is left, left is right. It's gonna look so much better after, I promise. Okay, it doesn't actually look that different. But look, our FPS doubled like magic. This was 4K before, I promise you. 480 Hertz. Woo! Look at how smooth. All right, we figured out the pinnacle of esports games, CS 1.6. It might not be CS2, it's 0.4 behind that, but we can at least see what an esports game, which is something you might actually want 480 Hertz, looks like. Super clear. Hello? Oh God, I'm by myself. What? Imagine there's other people. I am fragging them so hard because I have way more Hertz than them. Specs-wise, it's VESA HDR True Black 400 certified. It's got a max brightness in HDR mode of 1300 nits peak. For I/O, we've got two HDMI 2.1 ports. That's always a nice touch. Sometimes they end up with an HDMI 2.1 for one port and then 2.0 on the other. This one, 2.1 on both. It's also going to have two DisplayPort 1.4s. Right now, this engineering sample only has the one, but the final production ones will have two. We've got a Type-C port that does DP Alt mode and 65 watt PD charging, a USB Type-A hub, and audio output. On top of that, they also include a Wi-Fi antenna hookup on the monitor, so if you're somebody that uses Wi-Fi, having it on your monitor can actually be a really good way to get better signal because it's up and away instead of like tucked away at the back of your computer. A nice touch if you happen to need to use it. Oh, look at that, there's the Wi-Fi antenna right there. It's got a fairly good range of motion, tilting up and down, moving up and down, and swiveling left to right. It doesn't pivot though. And of course, a 100 by 100 VESA mount, which is always a nice touch. Whoa, it's got RGB and a Kensington lock, which is always nice. I also like it's got the nipple. That's the best way to have a monitor thing. I hate when they just have a bajillion buttons. This is so much better. Let's try SmoothFrog, which is like a clarity demo. Obviously, this doesn't necessarily translate the best over camera, but Dennis tried to do some pursuit cams, but it looks very clear. I don't really see any sort of ghosting in the colors or anything like that. It looks pretty good. Now, I would love to play an HDR video, but unfortunately this engineering sample doesn't yet have the HDR functionality built in. So if we go to enable HDR, it will be like, no HDR. In the future, obviously if you buy one, it's gonna have HDR. So don't stress about that. And if you are planning on watching HDR content or video editing or anything like that, it has coverage of 98.5% of the DCI-P3 color space, which is excellent. Let's show you the dual mode one more time. We were in 1080p mode for all of that. Let's go back to 4K. Just did it in the on-screen menu there, a couple seconds, and bam, we're at 4K 240. It still looks really smooth. Don't get me wrong, 4K 240 is really good. But it's not only monitors. They have a full lineup of new motherboards for both the latest Intel and AMD platforms that are launching. Like, look at this Intel Taichi Aqua. It has 10 USB-C ports and no Type-A. What kind of madness is this? Or X870E Taichi if you're looking for those latest AMD chips. Ooh. But I also heard there's an ASRock motherboard in a very interesting system over here.
Hey guys, been a while. I think this is actually my premiere on the ShortCircuit channel, although I'm not 100% sure. Jake pulled me out of retirement to check out this system. I don't think it particularly has a name yet. This is a prototype. It's not ready for showtime yet. But first, let's go over the hardware inside, because that'll explain a few things later on about why they chose some design decisions that they have. Inside of it is a Xeon W9 3495X. 2 96 gig sticks of Kingston DDR5 memory, a 2 terabyte Samsung SSD, dual Radeon RX 7800 XT GPUs, a Thermaltake 1650 watt power supply, and of course, we're here at ASRock. Thank you, ASRock, for bringing us to the show this year, a ASRock W790WS. Now, the immersion liquid cooling, the thing that I was really brought here for. What's going on with that? This is not mineral oil. This is significantly more expensive and better. One of the notes that you'll actually see on the card is that they say compatible with most material. That's a bit of an immediate issue with mineral oil because it eats things like rubbers and other stuff like that. This doesn't have that problem. One potential problem, if you wanted to use this yourself, however, is that just this amount of liquid that's in the case right now would cost you somewhere between $2,000 and $2,500 US dollars. Woo! It makes sense if you go back to that parts list, just that CPU, the Xeon W9-3495X that's on that ASRock motherboard, is gonna cost probably more than your entire system that you have at home. So you're probably gonna wanna cool it with something pretty good. Now again, this is a test, a prototype, a proof of concept. This isn't final version. Most fluorocarbon immersion systems, they're actually sealed. This one has open ventilation on the top, and I've heard tell that they're doing some experimental things trying to work on that, but this system here has had about a pen's width of fluid evaporated from it in a week. And when the fluid costs this much, you don't want that to happen. But that isn't actually normally a huge problem with these types of systems, and I'm sure they can solve it because most of them are actually completely sealed so that there is no loss from evaporation. Everything in the system that is being touched by the oil is being cooled. Fluorocarbon has very high thermal conductivity and can pull that out to this stack of radiators that's in the back, and those radiators can cool down the oil and cycle it back in. There's no real recycle time as far as my understanding goes. If you have it nicely sealed, your levels aren't going down, you can leave it in here basically forever and it will keep doing its job, which is very nice. Now, will you see me using this perfluorocarbon fluid in a personal rig update sometime soon? No, probably not. It's a little expensive for my taste, but I think it's cool that I got to see one in person. I haven't done that before. Usually they're big 42U server racks, completely sealed in data centers, and I don't always get to see that fun stuff. And I like that they're putting it in a nice, attractive form factor, a nice, attractive package. Speaking of which, you can find one of those in the link down below from ASRock. Thank you, ASRock, for bringing us to the show this year. Like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I don't know how to outro videos anymore. See you later.